In 2007, one company controlled 40% of the entire global phone market. Not 10%, not 20%, 40%. They were worth over $110 billion, bigger than McDonald's. Bigger than Nike, their ringtone was heard billions of times a day in Tokyo, New York, Lagos, Mumbai. And then a man in a black turtleneck walked onto a stage in San Francisco. And within 4 years, that $110 billion company was sold for just $7.2 billion. This is the story of Nokia, the greatest rise and the most spectacular fall in the history of business. But here's what nobody tells you: Nokia didn't die. And in 2026, they might be more powerful than ever. If you grew up in the late 90s or early 2000s, you remember the Nokia 3310. You dropped it down a flight of stairs. It survived. You threw it across the room. It survived. Some people joke it could survive a nuclear blast. But Nokia, the company, couldn't survive the smartphone, or at least, that's what everyone thinks. Today, we're going to go deep. 160 years of history. From a paper mill on a river in Finland to the phones in every pocket on Earth to a near-death collapse, and then a resurrection that's hiding in plain sight. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Nokia is one of the most important business stories ever told, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a masterclass in survival. And you'll see a pattern that shows up in every great business collapse, a pattern that's probably happening somewhere in a boardroom right now. Let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1865. Finland is a cold, forested country under Russian control. There are no smartphones, no electricity, no phones at all. A young mining engineer named Frederick Idestam standing next to a river called the Nokia Inverter. He's not thinking about technology. He's thinking about wood pulp. He builds a paper mill, grinds timber into paper, sells it across Europe. It works. Business is good. He brings in a partner, a Finnish senator named Leo Mekonen, and together they build a second mill. In 1871, they named the company after the river, Nokia. Nobody could have guessed what that word would one day mean to the world. For the next several decades, Nokia does exactly what you'd expect from a 19th century Finnish company. They make paper, then rubber, rain boots, tires, industrial rubber products, then power cables. Nokia becomes a conglomerate, a sprawling, lumbering industrial giant with its hands in a dozen different industries. By the mid-20th century, Nokia is Finland's largest employer. But they're not a tech company, not even close. So how do they get from rubber boots to the most iconic phone on Earth? That story starts with one decision in 1967. In 1967, Nokia merges with two other Finnish companies, the Finnish Rubber Works and the Finnish Cable Works, to form the Nokia Corporation we sort of recognize today. But they're still not a tech company. They're a conglomerate doing everything from making Wellington boots to laying telecommunications cables. And for a while, this works fine. Then the 1970s hit. Finland enters a brutal recession, energy prices spike. Global demand for paper and rubber collapses. Nokia is bleeding money. The company's leadership is in crisis. Their CEO at the time, Björn Westerlund, is staring down near bankruptcy. Here's where most companies fold, but Nokia makes a bet. They look at their cable division, the part of the business that lays telephone wires, and they ask a dangerous question. What if the future is wireless? They start hiring engineers, investing in electronics research, building radio telephones for military and industrial use. Nobody takes them seriously. In the early 1980s, Nokia launches some of the world's first car phones, massive, clunky devices that weigh several pounds and cost a fortune. They're a niche product, barely profitable, but Nokia is learning, building expertise, quietly becoming something new. and then a man named Jorma Ollila changes everything. It's 1992. Nokia's board makes a decision that seems borderline insane at the time. They appoint a 41-year-old executive named Jorma Ollila as CEO, and he immediately announces that Nokia is going to sell everything that isn't telecommunications. The paper division, gone. The rubber division, gone. The TV manufacturing business they'd acquired, gone. Nokia is going all in on mobile phones. Wall Street thinks he's lost his mind. Finland thinks he's going to destroy their national treasure. Ollila doesn't care. He says, and this is key, this is what the future looks like. That same year, 1992, Nokia releases the Nokia 1011, one of the first mass-market GSM digital phones in the world. Now here's the part most people miss. Nokia didn't just build phones. They helped build the standard that all phones would run on. In the 1980s, Nokia engineers had been in the room when Europe was designing the GSM protocol, the digital network standard that would replace the old analog systems. Nokia had a seat at the table when the rules of the game were being written. That is an enormous competitive advantage, and they were about to use it. The mid-1990s are a rocket ship. Mobile phones go from niche gadget to mass-market product in just a few years. And Nokia is positioned perfectly. They have the GSM expertise. They have the manufacturing scale. They have the distribution networks. In 1998, Nokia overtakes Motorola to become the #1 phone manufacturer in the world. Let that sink in. A company that was selling rubber boots 30 years earlier is now the biggest phone company on Earth. By 1999, Nokia's market cap peaks at around $250 billion. That makes it the most valuable company in all of Europe. The Nokia 3310 launches in 2000. It becomes one of the best-selling consumer electronics products in history. Over 126 million units sold. Their phones are in the hands of presidents, teenagers, taxi drivers, grandmothers. Nokia's headquarters in Espoo, Finland becomes a pilgrimage site for the global tech industry. The company is employing nearly 65,000 people, generating billions in profit every single year. An analyst at the time says, Nokia doesn't have competitors, it has annoying background noise. And here is where the story gets dangerous. Because when you're this dominant, you stop being afraid. And when you stop being afraid, you stop innovating. At its peak, Nokia's mobile phone division generated over $30 billion in annual revenue. The business model was elegant. Sell hardware, the phones, sell them at massive volume. Use skill to crush costs. Reinvest in R&D. By 2007, Nokia controls roughly 40% of the global mobile phone market. That's not a typo, for out of every 10 phones sold on Earth is a Nokia. They're also earning a fortune from patents and licensing. Nokia holds thousands of patents related to wireless communication, a financial asset that still pays dividends today. But here's the crack in the foundation. Nokia is built to make phones for a market that wants cheaper, more durable, more functional handsets. They're not built to make phones for a market that wants computers in their pockets. That distinction is about to cost them everything. January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walks onto a stage. Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products, he says. An iPod, an iPhone, and an internet communicator. The crowd cheers. The world watches. Nokia's executives watch too. And here's the thing, according to multiple people who were in those meetings, Nokia's leadership wasn't scared. They were dismissive. Nokia's CEO at the time, he reportedly said the iPhone had no chance because it didn't have a physical keyboard. Internal research showed Nokia engineers had been working on touchscreen technology since the early 2000s. They had prototypes of smartphones. But those projects were buried, killed by internal politics. Deprioritized because they threatened the existing phone lineup. This is the innovation paradox. Nokia had the talent. They had the technology. They had the money. But they had organizational fear. Middle managers were terrified to bring bad news upstairs. Engineers were scared to challenge the dominant business model. Leadership was optimizing for this quarter's results instead of next decade's survival. A 2015 research paper by INSEAD Business School interviewed 76 Nokia employees about this era. The conclusion was brutal. They found that Nokia's culture of fear and hierarchy directly caused the company to miss the smartphone revolution, not a lack of technology, not a lack of money, fear. Then in 2010, Nokia's new CEO Stephen Alop, a Canadian executive poached from Microsoft, writes an internal memo. He compares Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform. "We are standing on a burning platform," he writes, "and we must decide how we are going to change our behavior." The memo leaks to the press. It becomes one of the most famous memos in corporate history. The public reads it as an admission. Nokia knows it is dying. Stock price craters. Partners lose confidence. Top engineers start leaving. And then Alop makes the decision that many people believe was the final nail. He announces Nokia is abandoning their own operating system, Symbian, and betting the entire company on Microsoft's Windows Phone, not Android, not their own platform, Microsoft. The partnership made sense on paper. It made almost no sense in the market. Windows Phone never got the apps, never got the developers, never got the consumers. Nokia's market share collapses from 40% to under 4% in just a few years. In 2013, Microsoft purchases Nokia's phone business for $7.2 billion. The company that was worth $250 billion just 14 years earlier sold for $7 billion. Microsoft then writes down nearly the entire acquisition as a loss within 2 years, and just like that, Nokia is gone. Or is it? Here's what the headlines missed. When Microsoft bought Nokia's phone business in 2013, Nokia the corporation didn't disappear. They kept something far more valuable. The patents, the network equipment division, the Bell Labs scientists they'd soon acquire. In 2015, Nokia makes the most important bet of their second life. They acquire Alcatel-Lucent, and with it, one of the most storied research institutions in human history, Bell Labs. Bell Labs invented the transistor, the laser, the Unix operating system, information theory. Nokia now owns that. They pivot completely to telecommunications infrastructure. The towers, the antennas, the software, the systems that make 5G work. Today, in 2026, Nokia is one of only 3 companies in the world, alongside Ericsson and Huawei, capable of building out next-generation 6G networks. They're working on AI-native networks, systems that use artificial intelligence to self-optimize, self-heal, and handle the explosion of data coming from AI data centers. The phone in your pocket? You don't think about Nokia, but the invisible infrastructure that allows your phone to work, that allows AI models to talk to each other, that powers the data centers running this AI supercycle. A significant portion of that is Nokia. They went from a paper mill in 1865 to the world's most famous phone maker, to near total collapse, and then quietly became the plumbing of the modern internet. We started this video asking how a $110 billion company loses everything. The real question is, how does a 160-year-old company survive losing everything and come back anyway? The answer, it turns out, is simpler than you'd think. They never stopped being willing to change. Here is few key points for entrepreneurs. Dominance is the most dangerous drug in business. The moment you stop being afraid of losing, you start losing. Nokia's 40% market share made them comfortable. Comfort made them slow. Slow made them irrelevant. Never let success become an excuse to stop innovating. For business leaders, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Nokia had the strategy, the technology, and the talent. What they lacked was a culture where people could speak truth to power. If your team is too afraid to bring you bad news, that is the bad news. For investors, a company's core assets often outlive its core product. Nokia's patent portfolio and network infrastructure were always worth billions, even when the phones failed. Look beyond the headline product. Ask, what does this company own that lasts? For everyone, reinvention is possible at any age. Nokia is 160 years old. They've been a paper company, a rubber company, a cable company, a phone company, and now a 5G, 6G infrastructure giant. The through line isn't the product. It's the willingness to start over. The final lesson: the companies that survive the long game aren't always the ones who win the battle. They're the ones who live to fight the next one. Nokia lost the smartphone war, but they might win the AI war. And that raises a question I want you to think about in the comments below. Is there a company today, right now, that looks dominant but is making the exact same mistakes Nokia made in 2007? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. If this story hit different, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who love stories like this. And if you want to go deeper, the next video covers the story of BlackBerry, another once dominant tech giant that saw the future coming and still couldn't move fast enough. Same pattern, different tragedy. I'll see you there.